Hi guys. All right, I'm going to jump in again, and as consistent with all my other videos, at the end I'm going to have a little disclaimer section for you guys who are, my pulmonologist friends out there who have to comment on my work, then wait until after my disclaimer, and then I'm going to jump into the rest. I am going to explain a little bit about ARDS first, because what we're going to do is we're going to play around with the fiO2 and PEEP. We're going to keep a low tidal volume. And in our COVID patients, in our pandemic ARDS patients, we're going to do some pronation. I'll tell you why. All right. So normally, this represents one alveoli. Normally, there's a thin layer of fluid in your interstitial fluid area, and that's between your capillary and your alveoli is a little bit of interstitial fluid here. When you injure the human body, for instance, you get a mosquito bite, a little swelling happens. When you break an arm, a lot of swelling happens. When you get a burn, you get a little burn blister. So that is that inflammatory response. If you have just a little bit of injury to the lungs, a lot of times the lymphatic system has no problems draining it, or it might take it a day or two, and it'll drain it after a day or two. So that is easily reversible often, or a lot of times. I can't say every single time, because sometimes, obviously, it gets worse. And when it gets worse, what happens is the arterioles and the venules kind of leak more fluid. And so now you have a little bit of more fluid collection. So now you have more fluid collection building up here. And as that fluid collection builds up even more, it presses on the alveoli, and that alveoli starts to shrink and not be as effective. So that does two things right away. One, there's less alveoli cells that are diffusing oxygen and carbon dioxide back and forth through that. And two, it increases the area of diffusion, so it has a lot harder time getting oxygen to your capillaries, and it has a much harder time getting carbon dioxide to the alveoli. So that's the reason why your pulse ox drops and you become hypercapnic. You have higher CO2 content when you do an ABG. So this is your pulse ox dropping at the initial phase. Now, there's four different phases of this, but let me go through some of the finer details and for brevity's sake. Your alveoli isn't just one line. It's not one purple line. It's a whole bunch of purple cells, small cells. And they're so tightly packed that normally they don't allow fluid in. However, when you have such a big fluid buildup, what happens is the fluid starts to leak into your alveoli itself on the inside. And so you have fluid buildup going inside. And so now you have even more fluid building in the alveoli. It's now not as spongy as it was before, and now your pulse ox is dropping even more, your carbon dioxide is rising even higher, and you're having a harder and harder time breathing. Your tidal volumes, your own intrinsic tidal volumes, without being on the vent, starts to drop, because this is starting to take up space in your lung areas, in your alveoli. So at this point, we're going to intubate you, or hopefully maybe you've been intubated before it gets this bad. And I'm going to represent our tube, our ET tube, as this little pink area right here, and I'm going to intubate the alveoli itself. I'll explain that in just a little bit, little disclaimer there. So I'm going to intubate the alveoli itself, only because I love grapes. Here's my alveoli, and if you think about this bowl having a small layer of water in that bowl, then dipping my alveoli in that small area of water doesn't really do much. However, if you think of this bowl being full of water and I dip my alveoli in it full of water, then there's not going to be a lot of gas exchange happening between my alveoli and my capillaries. Okay, prop number 2. I like my props. This is my lung. It's a little cone shaped, half cone, right? Half cone shaped. The blue represents my diaphragm area, the bottom. And then the red area here is a little divot, a little pocket. And that's where my heart is going to be, should be. So in this episode right here, then in this manner, I'm showing you my right lung. And as you can tell, the front of my right lung is much smaller than the area of my back, the back of my lung, my posterior lung. So if I take another bowl of water and I am supine, I'm facing up, and I'm like this, facing up, and I dip that area of the lung in the water, that's the area, that's the dependent part of my lung that's dipped in the water. And lungs are spongy, so if you consider this made of sponge instead of paper, then that part's going to soak up the water, and that part of my paper lung is going to get wet. So if I want to minimize the amount of my paper lung getting wet, I will pronate. I will face the patient down, and then the large area of the lung can stay inflated, cannot be affected. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to increase the fiO2, and then we're also going to increase the peep. That shows you why we need to pronate, and then the peep will secondarily try to open up some of this ARDS, try to get you a little bit more area in the ARDS. But what's more important is that I am going to save, with my low tidal volume and high peep, I'm going to save the parts of the lung that's unaffected and my pronation. This part of the lung is unaffected. That's the part I'm going to try to inflate with PEEP. If I put a bunch of tidal volume, what happens is the part of the lung that has atelectasis, the part of the lung that's dipped in the water, that's not working well, is not going to absorb a lot of that air that I'm pushing down, a lot of air and oxygen that I'm pushing down into the lung. And the good parts of the lung get traumatized. It's called barotrauma. It's trauma caused by pressure. These healthy alveoli, because I'm pushing too much volume into that lung, get affected, and they get traumatized by the high volume. And so what I want to do is increase the PEEP, keep the tidal volumes low. Some areas are using 5.5 milliliters per kilogram. This is based on a patient's height for a tidal volume, and then so the ideal body weight is in kilograms, but getting the kilograms is based on the patient's height. Most of us use 6 milliliters per kilogram of tidal volume. So low tidal volumes, and then you want to balance out the PEEP and the FiO2 by using your PF ratio. But you want to oxygenate as much as possible using FiO2 and PEEP, and not increasing your tidal volumes, low tidal volumes. Can't stress that enough. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to pips and plateau pressures. Pretend I'm inflating an alveoli. So this is the reason why I'm intubating the alveoli, okay? Because I want you to think of everything on this side of this graph, which is found on your ventilator, by the way. You can ask your RT. Is going to be my airway, and everything on this side of these pictures are going to be my alveoli. I'll explain that in just a second. Pretend I'm inflating an alveoli. So what's happening there is, pretend I'm also pumping up a tire, a bicycle tire, with a pump. I am pumping that air inside the tire actually inflates the tire, and then when I stop pumping, it kind of bounces back a little bit. So this is me pumping the inflation as it goes up, and then when it bounces back a little bit, hits normal, then that's the pressure that I want to put the tire pressure gauge on, and that's my plateau pressure. So while I'm pumping, I don't really, when I'm doing a bicycle tire anyway, I really don't care about the pressure that while I'm pumping. But after I finish pumping and I want to check out the tire pressure of that, the tire pressure, then I will get a plateau pressure. So the peak pressure and the plateau pressure. So peak inspiratory pressure and the plateau pressure. Pip, peak inspiratory pressure, and then the plateau pressure. If in this example, this case, I have a higher peak pressure and then a normal or the same plateau pressure, if I have a high peak but the same plateau pressure, then it's probably due to secretions. It's probably an airway issue. So again, anything on this side is an airway issue, anything on this side is an alveoli issue. Anything on this side is an airway issue, anything on this side is an alveoli issue. Anything on this side, airway issue, anything on this side is an alveoli issue. If I only have an increase in PIP, but no increase in plateau pressure, it's usually going to be either secretions or a mucus plug. It's going to be foreign body aspirations. That's why we put in that NG tube in yesterday on my last episode. And then it might be bronchospasms. It might be my pump isn't working very well, and so the bronchus, so the reason why I intubated the alveoli is I've included the bronchus as part of my airway. There's not a lot of gas exchange happening in the bronchus, right? And so it might have a bronchospasm, or the patient could be biting on the tube, or they could be a kinked ET tube. But anyway, these are all airway problems right here at the beginning part. If my PIP and my plateau pressures go up, if both my PIP and plateau pressures go up, then my compliance is diminishing. The entire airway part, the alveoli part, it's probably because of worsening pneumonia, increasing pulmonary edema, right? All of this water here, all of this interstitial fluid here is pressing on more and more alveoli, so I'm losing volume and losing compliance. And so could be a pneumothorax where part of my lung is just not getting any volume whatsoever because it's a collapsed lung. Could be ascites or anything that has increased abdominal pressure. If you're taking care of a trauma patient, this might be abdominal compartment syndrome, or something that's pressing onto the diaphragm so it prevents the ventilator from pressing back down. So you'll have a high PIP and a high plateau pressure. Or it could be increasing pleural effusion, or it could be a right main stem bronchus, right? You're not inflating the other lung, and so you're having a lot more pressure, both on inspiration and on plateau pressure. Okay, also, you're gonna wanna know your PF ratio. That's super easy to calculate, so I'm not even gonna go there. But you're gonna wanna know that in order to gauge your FiO2 and PEEP while keeping your tidal volumes low. All right, so that's it. The rest of my part is my disclaimer, so you guys can stop paying attention unless you have a dying to comment on my work. So no good deed goes unpunished. Follow your protocols, policies, and procedures, because you don't want to do anything based on some guy on YouTube telling you how to do things. That doesn't really make a great defense. If you have to, change your policies and procedures and then follow the new policies and procedures that you help change. Be open for change. Right now it's April, May 2020. I don't know, they could invent some ventilator that prevents us from doing any of this, just calculates everything. Or everyone might switch to PRVC mode ventilation and all of a sudden everything is automatically done for us. And none of this needs to be done other than pronating the patient. I don't know. But just be open to change. Things can change. There's specialists and specialties out there. There's certainly like neonates that this is not going to cover. There are patient populations that are just trauma. They're 18-year-olds. I don't have to worry about their lungs. Or 16-year-olds. I don't have to worry about their lungs. This does not cover them. And then if I have any comments or if I've made any errors, I'm going to put it in the comments if I have anything else to add, or if I've made any errors, I need to change those. I put them in the comment section. There's possible future episodes based on what you want to hear. And I've done a couple of other ones. I'm going to try to all link up. I've been doing this for a little bit and so a lot of my videos are kind of all over the place. And so what I'd like to do is put them all in one place. So upcoming is outsidej3.com. And if you really feel like it, I really do need to hire like an editor to help me process these videos and get things going and get my website up. So you could donate to me, and all of that will go directly to free educational videos. I want to say thanks. If you do donate and you want me to mention you, certainly let me know, and I will do my best to acknowledge that you helped me with creating these videos. All right, cheers, thanks, and stay safe out there. And well, cheers. I'm gonna duck down and I'm gonna leave this here because let you give you a chance to screen grab. All right, cheers.